Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick thing to tell you what this is actually about. I'm working on a book about Flash games and their history, and over the course of working on that, I've been interviewing several Flash devs from back in the day about their games, the culture, what they thought about the handling of Flash. And as a result, I managed to get an interview with Edmund McMillen, and with his permission, I interviewed him over audio, and I'm putting it up here on YouTube for you to see. There's a little bit that's been cut off at the front and the back because it was just, it's just a general little bit of talking stuff. But here is the full and unedited interview. Enjoy. All right. So, I have this giant list of like 3 pages of questions I send out to everyone. I've just had to try and crush that down for a more appropriate audio interview. So, we'll start with the most important question of all time. What were your favorite Flash games? Condition, not your own.
What were my favorite Flash games? My favorite Flash games were always revolved around Dan Paladin and Tom. Sometimes Dan by himself. I mostly just, way back in the day when I had started, there weren't many games that did much outside of stuff that Tom made. And I really liked when Dan came in and started making some weird stuff.
Fair enough. Anything specific from Dan's, or just in general?
I like Dad and Me. I like Alien Hominid. There was a few unreleased games that I remember prototype that he would send me that never saw the light of day that were super interesting.
That's a shame. You wouldn't happen to have copies of those.
No, I mean back then you don't think to save anything. He might. I mean, it's definitely possible. There's a game that you would like flick. There's a character that was flying and it would like flick its tongue and make a ball of liquid. I don't know. It was so strange. And you were like in a tree. That's all I really remember. But if I'm being honest, I didn't play a ton of Flash games outside of like later when I was pushing developers who were making stuff in like Game Maker and whatever else to like I remember pushing Anna Anthropy and Matt Thorson into the realm of like you should get money for what you're doing because you're doing everything for free and you can make money off of Flash games. And of course everything that they made was great. I love those games as well, like Give Up Robot and Redder and Money Seas was one of the first ones that he made, or she now, or they now, I don't know.
Fair enough. So, your favorite part of Flash, major or minor?
100%. My favorite part of Flash is the lines,
the lines,
the line
the
thickness tool. The vector lines. Like, it's kind of almost become my look. Like everything I draw in most of my games has that vector outline look. I absolutely love it. It gets kind of a basic, for me anyway. I mean, you can draw whatever you want with it, but for my style, it makes things look almost cel-shaded. Super simplistic, really fast, easy to use, easy to animate with. And that's what I primarily use it for. Of course, I didn't program my games, so that's what it was about. Basic illustration and animation.
Yeah, because Tyler told me about how you've got that engine in The End Is Nigh, where it takes Flash assets and the engine and just encapsulates it.
Yeah, Mugenics uses the same one. I was just using it before we started the call.
Fair enough. Good reason to like it, I suppose, if it thoroughly changed how you did your art.
Yeah, I mean it's my style at this point. It's like people see it and I think they instantly know it, and I'm just the most comfortable in it. But it is the point where it's like a while back I still had an AOL email address, and when I tell people I still do art in Flash, they scoff a little bit, and I scoff back and I say go to hell.
As you should.
I'm just super comfortable in it and I like it, and Tyler's obviously made a million games using Flash and he's so familiar with it as well, so it just kind of made sense.
Fair enough. That's a surprisingly good answer. So, any stories or strong memories from the time that you were around in the Flash scene? They don't have to be positive. I just like hearing about all those little things that people wouldn't hear about otherwise.
Well, I mean, I think just kind of getting in, when I got into the scene, it was not so much Flash, but websites. Everybody was just making websites. So a lot of people, Tom included, used to make zines, and I made zines as well, which were basically like little magazines that were independently done. And I think Tom's was a Neo Geo fan magazine, which is why it's called Newgrounds, Neo Geo.
Yeah.
And I had a few comics, but my main comic was called This Is a Cry for Help. And I got to a point where I learned enough basic like HTML, Dreamweaver, basic website stuff, including Flash, that I wanted to take my zines and put them online, because at that point, that's the transition everybody was making, like 1998 to 2001. A lot of people were coming over. So you'd see a lot of writers, a lot of cartoonists, a lot of comic artists making their way from one medium to the other and kind of transitioning onto the internet. And everybody had a homepage, their URL, their website. And I had This Is a Cry for Help.com way back when. And I used Flash to just do my basic navigation, because it was the spiciest, coolest looking websites were made way back then. I think Will Stamper had one of the more crazy looking websites, some really weird, almost neo-psychedelic. I couldn't even tell you what it was. It's like weird, abstract, almost looks like the cover of OK Computer with like little dots and lines, like little bips and bops everywhere. It's fucking weird. But there was just basically a lot of kids making really cool websites back then. And I got into Flash because I just wanted to make a website. And it turned out that you could do so much more than just make buttons that people can click that can open up other web page URLs. And it was from that, I think, oh my God, the baby's crazy, that I decided to experiment more with interactivity and animation. And I made this, it might still be Undergrounds. I made this interactive image called The Pond, which was just this pond that was, I like took a few JPEGs and then like converted them into Flash vectors. Like there was like a convert tool that made them look more flashy, like a couple tones basically. And then I made it so you could click the water, and each time you click the water droplet, it would like do a little plop. And so it was just super minor. Like you click something, it spawns a ripple, it makes a sound. But then I had a zone, and if you clicked a certain zone, this decaying head would come out of the water and go, "Woo!" And I thought it was the cool shit.
I was literally about to say, you probably thought that was the coolest thing in the damn universe. And at the time,
So I was like, it's like before I was doing this stuff, in my comics, I was doing stuff like I did this thing called, the hidden pictures, activity book type things where it's like, can you find the pencil? Can you find the whatever? Like there's a bunch of hidden images in a picture.
Where's Waldo, basically?
Basically. In one of mine, I did, in my comic, I did this really graphic, horrible picture of a homeless guy jerking off in an alleyway. And I said, can you find these images? And I listed all the images, but there were no images. So it was just the idea of somebody looking at my comic and like trying to analyze every little shape to try to find these things that didn't exist. And then they just had to look at this picture, this horrible picture. And of course, so when I started pushing myself towards more interactive things, I was mostly thinking about how could I interact with the person on the other end and in some amusing way for myself. And that was one of the first things that I did. And being able to have people comment stuff and you instantly, like, you never see the person that's reading my comic that's enjoying it in any way. But on Newgrounds, people would comment. Even if it was horrible, it was still validation that somebody was seeing my work, and there was a number counter of how many people were seeing my work. And I think in that era, it wasn't so much just that specific moment, but in general, just around that time, submitting something to Newgrounds and seeing exactly how many hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were actually interacting with it and seeing it, or being forced to see it, or experiencing it. It just, it kind of opened my eyes to that exchange of being able to put somebody in an environment that I've created and then have them react to it and then give me feedback right away. Was kind of a magic experience.
I was about to say, you literally just answered like the 2 next questions I had for you with that answer. So good job, but I'll ask it anyway, just so you can elaborate. What was the community like?
Harsh. Harsh in a way that I was completely okay with, and I still am. I'm a very harsh critic of my own work. And in a lot of ways, you got the usual bullshit, comments. You're a fag, you're fat, that sort of stuff. But then there was other ones that were like nitpicky, but valid in some way. And you learn fast from what's not jiving with people. Like, you can kind of blur your eyes and see roughly what 100 comments saying your game sucks. I hate this level. If it turns out that everybody's saying your game sucks, but 20% are saying it's because of this one level, then maybe that level can be worked on. But yeah, it was just it was cool to get that feedback, harsh or not, and the fact that sometimes it was just a compliment regardless of somebody taking their time to write a comment at all on something.
Really? Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
It's validation for being alive. Being able to put something online and have somebody say anything about it. I would much rather upset a bunch of people with my work than release something and have no one ever say anything. So there's something to that, something to doing something that is evoking some response from somebody. And back then I didn't care if the response I was getting was good, bad, or whatever else. I mean, I used to have a hate mail section on my website where I'd heckle the people who heckled me. So I was down with whatever comments anybody was going to give me, because all I wanted was for people to experience what I was creating. That's it. That's all I cared about. And even just one fat faggot comment meant that that person saw my work and, made it a little more worth making, more validating, I guess.
That's a really good way to put it. I was about to draw a comparison to be or not to be.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Something along those lines. My brain is not working today. All right, so yeah, you just talked about how they helped you and your games by giving you all the criticism you could possibly want, even if a lot of it was shit. So we'll move on. What were your favorite Flash portals? I'm assuming Newgrounds is going to be in there, but did you ever visit any others?
Yeah, Bullseye Art.
Bullseye Art. I
very
don't think I'm familiar with that.
Very obscure and mostly their own. They had some wacky shit. It was very early. So it was, primarily in the 2000 to 2002 era, there were no games. If anything, it was a drag and drop, and there wasn't anything. I mean, other than Tom's. Tom was the only one making games then. But it was like mostly animations. And Bullseye Art had a series of minor interactive animations that were insane. That revolved around this donkey character called Don Key. And I absolutely loved it. I submitted my stuff to their portal. It wasn't automated, and nobody else was automated way back when. And I think they put up a few of my things, but I really loved I have no fucking, I don't know who they were. I really like their stuff, and they didn't submit it to any other portal, so you can only see it on their website. Outside of that, of course, I submitted everything to Congregate, which I also made the logo for. I'm the creator of the Congregate logo. And the
Really?
original,
I didn't know that.
And the original ant animation, I made that. And Armor Games. I never really played anything on there, but I know that the dude was a sponsor of a lot of my work, so
yeah,
I will name drop that.
Yeah, that's pretty much the long and the short of mine right there. Admittedly, I was nowhere near into Flash as I could have been when I was younger. That was because I didn't have an internet connection that was faster than dial-up. But yeah, so like anything you can tell me about those portals, about how they were back then, would be very useful.
Just a web page. Just a web page with the Flash file on the specific. You click a link. Sometimes they would show an image of what it was going to be, but it would be literally, they would upload the JPEG that showed a still of the animation, and then you click it, and then it goes to the page with the animation on it. It preloads, it plays.
It really was just that simple.
Yeah. There was no portaling. It was just its own thing, and then you could submit stuff via email because the files were so small in Flash, which was great, of course, too. It's one of the real like pulls towards Flash was vector-based graphics that were like a few K. Yeah, super simple.
Yeah, I always wondered about them and how they managed to keep up with like manual submissions. Like even when I work on Flashpoint and there's like hundreds of things to go through, even just clicking a few buttons to get them in one at a time is a bit slow. So I just wonder how they managed to keep up. Were there just that few people sending stuff in back then?
Yeah. I would say that they were really picky, and they didn't get a ton of submissions. It wasn't like Newgrounds. Like Newgrounds was just the king, like you would just, I wish the blamed stuff on Newgrounds that I submitted before, of course I don't even have it anymore. I used to sometimes just submit total garbage crap animations, and sometimes my wife would make weird stuff and throw it up there.
I don't want to get your hopes up, but Blame stuff is still technically on the Newgrounds server. I know this for a fact.
Well,
because if you manage to find it in the web archive, and if you remember like what the file name of the SWF is and put it together in just the right way, it's still up on their server.
I don't know if I would be able to remember that.
Yeah, I keep meaning...
It would be fun. I know I have one blamed one that I kept because it had my grandma's voice on it. And I think I put it on a CD. But I did also, fun fact, I did the original blamed graveyard SWF file animations and graphics for Tom.
Unfortunately, I wasn't around for that.
It used to I did like 4 of them. It was just like a zombie not FLA, but SWF file that was like half buried in the ground, and then there's a gravestone. I made those. It was a while ago.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, I need to talk to Tom. I need to try and get some input for him on this book, and I also need to ask him about that. Ask him whether he'd be willing to send all the Blam stuff to me so I could find some way to share it around.
Well, he's not a hard guy to talk to, or to get a hold of. Really, you could probably message him on Twitter and he'd respond.
Yeah, I just getting up the courage. It was enough sending an email to you.
He's one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life, by far. The guy is like, he's made so many people's careers, and he's the most humble fucking guy ever. He's a realist, and he's a family man, and he's a really good person. Like, I know a lot of personal things about him that he knows, that he doesn't know I know about him. Stuff that he's done for other people, and he's really a super admirable, really good, genuinely good guy.
I'm half tempted to ask.
No, he's just a really giving person who cares a lot for people and the community in general, and he gives a lot.
I'm going to have to find somewhere to put that in the book. As with literally everything else you've said so far. All right.
Fun fact. So Tom got a Pioneer Award at GDC this year. Of course, it wasn't really publicized because they didn't publicize it this year for some reason. But either way, he did get the Pioneer Award, which is like a lifetime achievement, really, award. And he asked me to do his intro, and which was a huge honor. And I'm like, of course, I'll do it. And then when I said yes and he submitted me to the panel or whatever, they rejected and said that I've been banned from GDC for 7 years.
What
And
for?
I don't know. I wasn't allowed to I wasn't allowed to do anything with them. I'm completely banned from GDC and the IGF. They vaguely said it was from something that I said about the judging process. Whoops.
Oh. Yeah.
Which I know I've said a lot of things.
Yep, I'm actually fully aware of some of the things that you've said.
What did I say? Because I don't remember.
Neither do I. I was just watching a video from a YouTuber, and they had like clips of you talking about how the IGF works.
Okay. Well, yeah, I asked them to like tell me exactly what it is that I said that made me banned for seemingly life. And they had not gotten back to me on that. It's been a few weeks now. But whatever. It's a badge of honor, really. It's still, I'd like to know mostly so I could make a stink about it online, because I'm sure it's stupid.
Yeah, I believe you on that. It's kind of unrelated, but I'm blocked by all those people because I was on the first Gamergate block list. Yes!
Oh, yeah.
I was, because...
I'm on a few block lists myself, so...
Yeah. I was following Christina Hoff Summers and Total Biscuit at the time, and that was enough to get me blocked instantly.
There you go. I think one of the reasons I'm blocked is because I follow Notch.
Yeah.
And then I think that's... But I was on before Notch was even a thing that people were upset about. I was on... what the fuck is that guy from Star Trek? Like, he was a kid on Star Trek.
Will Wheaton.
Oh yeah, I was on. He's an idiot, but yeah. I was on one. I was on one of his block lists. A lot of people. He's like told people to use the block list, so I got blocked by a lot of people because of that. And I still, who knows why?
Yeah. Who knows? Like, yeah. Two funny things. One, there was some guy stealing my YouTube videos, and when I went to look him up on Twitter, he blocked me because apparently he was using the block list. So yeah. That was weird. And two, that block list was so, like, over the top that at one point the American KFC Twitter account was on it.
That's nuts. That's not that. I mean, I think I'm worse than KFC. But
fair enough. Anyway, we should probably get back on topic.
Yeah.
All right. So, did you ever interact much with the development side of the community?
The game development side? What do you mean?
Like, were there any communities like based around that? Any forums, any discussion boards, anything like that?
Yeah. I was a frequenter of TigSource, TIGSource.com. That was an indie game forum.
What were they like?
Harsh. Harsh and circle jerky, I would say that. Very in group. A lot of so like TIG was mostly run by Derek Yu and a handful of other people, and he made Spelunky. And the forum was filled with everybody you would know, like all the big names frequented the forums. I remember Notch put up an alpha build of Minecraft for everybody to play and check out for free ages before it came out. But yeah, it yeah, back then it was kind of mostly like to just be part of a community, but it was similar to other anonymous or semi-anonymous communities where there was a lot of people being mad at other developers for things. I made a video called The Internets ages ago. I think it's unlisted now, but it was part of like extras on the Indie Game the Movie extra thing. But it was just me pretending to be those people who they would always just like a new game would come out and it'd be really good, and their response would be, it's not as good as everybody says it is. That's the conclusion. It's not as good as everybody says it is.
It'd just be everyone being hipsters.
Basically, I mean, it was all armchair developers. It was all people who wanted to be the next big thing. And even though the scene was so tiny, everybody knew each other, and no one had any form of success back then because you didn't make money off your games. It still was very like catty and enjoyably so. There was a lot of that, and I had fun with it. But it was a nice community because you did get to know some other people, and then once people started submitting stuff to the IGF, there was more like get-togethers in person. A lot of those people are still around. I know Cactus was a big somebody on TIG Source, and I mean just about everybody.
Cactus. Are you talking about the Clean Asia Cactus?
Yes. Jonathan, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Cactus. He made Hotline Miami.
Really? That's what he went on to do?
Yeah.
Huh, I'd never made the connection because I've actually got.
He's like amazing. He's one of my favorite ones. And Terry Kavanaugh, he's so good.
Yeah, I love Terry. He was one of the first people to turn up on the Flashpoint website, and he was like, "You need to make your download buttons bigger. They're not big enough."
That sounds like him.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's a good guy too. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, when Terry Kavanaugh tells you to make your download buttons bigger, they take up the entire goddamn webpage once you're done.
Yeah, he play tested Super Meat Boy, and he, oh my god, it was so strange. He played it with so I handed him the analog stick, the gamepad, and he picked it up and he was controlling the analog stick like you would a joystick on an Atari. So he grabbed it with in between two fingers on one hand. It was so weird. It was just he was holding it in such an odd way, yet he was like perfecting every level. It's pretty nuts.
I'm sorry, but I imagined you just handing him like this gigantic box with a analog stick on top of it that's like 3 times the size. But now I can't think of which is funnier.
He's a button size queen.
Fair enough. I'm gonna have to ask him about that because I've actually sent him the list of questions and I'm waiting for a response. So I'll have to ask him about that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he'll remember. I mean, it was one of the few times we were able to interact back then.
Fair enough. And anyone else in particular? You got any Flash developers in particular that you got any memorable things about?
I mean, I just like I used to stay up really late at night talking to Will Stamper. And
I haven't actually heard this guy's name. Would you mind filling me in who he is?
Will Stamper. Just look up Stamper. He makes a lot of lewd, crude YouTube videos and or Flash animations. He was part of Battle Block Theater. He was the voice of Hattie. He wrote the song for the end of Battle Block. He's a friend of Tom's, he's a friend of Dan's, he's a friend of mine, and he makes some really wacky shit. He was one of the OGs on Newgrounds. He made a few extremely popular animations back then. I think he just went by Stamper WS. But I used to stay up really late in the back in the heyday when I was like 20, 21 years old. I lived with my grandma and I would stay up for 48 hours. I would stay up as long as I possibly could because I was experimenting with sleep deprivation and creativity and trying to do as many weird projects as I possibly could back then. And really late at night, I would stay up watching this show called Coast to Coast with Art Bell, which had a bunch of really creepy stuff on it. And him and I would talk about it and then send each other pictures of aliens that we found on the internet and scare the shit out of each other. I have a lot of fond memories of that.
That's a crazy story. And it just made all the funnier by, I think it sounded like your baby trying to shush your wife.
The baby's trying to get the cat that's behind where she is, and she's constantly trying to grab her.
Fair enough.
She still hasn't slept. Sure, I can turn the light off. Or down. Okay. Ambiance.
All right, so you already said what made you develop Flash games. You just thought it was cool that you wanted to make websites, and you made that the thing with the skeleton that comes out of the water that you just talked about.
It was technically, I believe, a real picture of a decaying Asian woman's face, but it was vectorized. I remember the image.
You remember the image all these years later.
Honestly, probably the most memorable moment for me that revolved around Flash work was, I don't know why I found out about it, but there was a UK magazine called like The Internet Magazine, I believe. And they had emailed me and said that they included my work in their magazine. And I asked them if they could send me a copy, and it took forever, of course, to get the copy of the magazine. And somebody had done one of the little, like, it was a very small sidebar article about Dead Baby Dress Up, which was probably one of my most popular original games. And it was so weird to see my work in a magazine from a whole other place. Let alone a magazine. It was the first time I'd ever been in a magazine. I maybe been in the local paper once or twice for my comics, but not in like a magazine somebody actually pay money for in the UK, and them actually contact me and asked if I want a copy. It was pretty crazy.
I know how you feel on that one, because same thing happened to me. I volunteer teaching elderly people how to use computers, and one of them came up to me one day and he said, you're the guy who does that Blue Maximus Flashpoint thing, right? I said that I was. And he said that one of our local computer magazines had actually done a story on it.
That's crazy.
So I got to walk down to my local newsagent, buy a copy of that magazine, and I found the article towards the back of it.
That's cool. Yeah, it's always surreal to see that, where it like kind of breaks this weird fourth wall where it's no longer all just in your imagination and somebody else has validated something that you're doing in a whole other realm, way outside of your influence or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
It definitely gave me a taste of that. I think that was the point where I was like, whenever I do something that I think is worthy of somebody caring about, I'm going to submit it to a bunch of magazines and see if I can get more articles. I used to collect them. I used to collect all the magazines that I was in until just recently, where it's like I have this crate of magazines and I just don't want them anymore. I did keep the one though. I kept that magazine specifically, also because my grandma had written on it, page 48, so she could remember what page the article was about me, and I still have that one.
Your grandma sounds like she was very influential in your life.
And she was really cool. Yeah, even though everything that I made was, you've seen the stuff that I make, and she was a very devout Catholic woman, but she would always say, "Don't make it so ugly." Does it always have to be so ugly? Can you make something like a flower or? I'm like, no, sorry. But she was always down with whatever, and was always very proud of me and showing people. It's pretty amusing to think that she would be like, a friend of hers would come over from the old folks home that she lived in, and be like, "Look at my grandson is in for his dead baby game."
That's going in. So you were talking about how you made the interactive picture by yourself. So it was really that easy for you to get started. Like, how easy was it for you to start on Flash? Because a lot of people have always been going on about how it was the easiest thing to get into in terms of game development at the time.
It wasn't that easy for me because I absolutely hated programming. Even the basic scripting stuff, I hated it. I'm more okay with it now. I'm getting in there right now when it comes to, no heavy lifting stuff, but I at least understand some scripting, so I can go in and edit variables. But even back then, it was just like, it would take so much longer for me to do it. I derived no pleasure from it at all. And after that game, I think was the point where I started to buddy up with Calder Bradford, who was the programmer for my first few Flash games. I think the first one was Carius Weltling and then Clubby the Seal. And then we wanted to make a bunch. Dumpling, Pishai, Weltling 2. I think that was it. Dumpling. Yeah. We made a bunch of games together. And he did all the heavy lifting when it came to programming because I wanted nothing to do with it. I wish I could be like one of those guys, you know, like Terry, really, or Anna.
Where they're just like entirely self-sufficient.
Yeah, where they could just do it all, right? But the thing is I can't. I mean, I guess I could, but it doesn't seem worth spreading myself thinner. Like, I don't want to have to spend so much more time doing it when I know I can find somebody that's so much better than me and actually loves doing it. And I'm the type of person who's like, never hire somebody who, when in art, you never hire somebody who's not into what they're doing, because it'll kind of it'll come through in some way in the project. So I like to work with people who are enthusiastically excited about the stuff that I think is so boring. Because it's going to show in the game. It's going to show that somebody put a lot of love and care into that programming aspect of things. And yeah, people may say it's easy, and I'm sure it was, but I hated it and I didn't want to do it. So very quickly, outside of drag and drop or generate and or, you know, basics, not even basic scripting of just calling, you know, audio files and stuff like that. I'm out of here. I'm an artist. I'm going to illustrate and animate, and that's it.
Fair enough. I can imagine how much The Binding of Isaac would fall over if you tried to code it in that case.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No.
It was already kind of a technical nightmare.
I'm pretty good at programming board games, and that's about it.
Fair enough. So, you were already talking about your first games and how they went up on Newgrounds and how you felt about them at the time, but when you started going viral, what were your thoughts about that? Like, when you started showing up in magazines across the world, because that you would have had to have been seen by so many people at that point. What was going through your head when those games started coming out and started being as popular as they were?
Well, I mean, it made me feel like there is a possibility that in the future I can make a living off of this. And that was the goal. And I put a tremendous amount of work into continuing that virality, that word of mouth. I continued to do things as much as I possibly could with the time that I had, in order to build enough of a base, even if they weren't fans, just simple name recognition. So I maximized the probability of getting a deal. And it got to a point like in 2008 where so many people that I knew were getting deals that I felt like I was just as good at, suddenly, like, friends of mine and stuff, my peers were becoming millionaires, and just doing crazy stuff. And I felt like I could do it. And it was all about making sure that I push myself out there as much as possible to maximize. You know, you throw a lot of hooks in the water and you catch, raise the probability of catching a big fish. And that's what I did especially for 2008. I compiled all my stuff on a CD, and I really put in a lot of work on, the one-man press show of getting myself out there, emailing, calling, and snail mailing everyone I possibly could. Here's my collection. I've made 37 games, and before that I made comics, and here's everything in one place. Check it out. It's super weird. And doing that, I got the attention of Cliff Blazinski, and a lead on, what was it called? The underwater first-person shooter game. It's in the past, but in the future. And there's little girls.
BioShock.
BioShock. Yeah. One of the lead developers of BioShock also both him and Cliff had actually messaged or said something in an interview about my work, about my CD. And I was like, holy crap. And I emailed them and I was like, do you have any contacts in the industry? Because I would love to work on a console game. and both of them gave me contacts at Microsoft and Nintendo, and I did what I could to wheel and deal and plead and beg for the opportunity.
And that's how you got around to making Super Meat Boy?
Yeah. Originally it was Gish 2. And when that fell through, it was Super Meat Boy. And it was Super Meat Boy purely because Meat Boy at that point in time was my most popular Flash game. And by far the most accessible and the least abrasive of all my past works. So that was the one I wanted to gamble on. And once I had the opportunity, I just went in full force.
And that was all because you did a bunch of stuff in Flash and managed to share it around.
Yep. And technically, I did do all the art in Super Meat Boy in Flash as well. But it was exported in PNG pieces that were put back together.
Yep, makes enough sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, fair enough. I think we'll move on to the next question then. Can you draw a Actually, no. No. Did you get any actual sponsorships for Flash games specifically? Just before we move on to that.
Oh yeah, of course. That's how I paid rent.
What were those like? I don't have many answers around those just yet.
Yeah. I don't know exactly when it started. I want to say late 2006, maybe early 2007. Definitely after 2005. People started to get competitive with Newgrounds, and they started buying ad space, essentially. Sponsorship meant that when your game started, you needed to have something that said newgrounds.com presents or armorgames.com presents or congregate.com presents. And then there would be a button on the title screen that says play more games, and it would link back to their website, and that was essentially it. And in exchange, they would give you money. And that money started out as being a couple $100 and eventually a couple $1,000. I wish I could tell you what kind of money I was making in the end, but I was thinking about probably making about $3,000 to $5,000. I think the most I ever made for a game was $5,000 for a sponsorship, which was pretty crazy. I think on average I made 1.5 to 2,500 for a sponsorship. And by the time I was edging out of Flash games, sponsorships stopped happening and people started buying the rights, which is kind of scary. And I know Adult Swim was buying rights, and you can get, the rumor was you could get between 10 and 30,000 for, depending on your game, which is a lot of money. And when I made The Binding of Isaac, that was the first thing I thought of, and I actually contacted them and asked them about doing it. And I very much considered it because I didn't think it was going to be an option to put a Flash game up on Steam. I didn't think they would let me because it wasn't like it is now. You actually had to have a contact, and actually they would have to agree to upload your game for you. There was a gatekeeping situation that would only put up quality games. So I did not think that was a viable option. So I looked into the Adult Swim thing because for the most part, sponsorships just didn't happen anymore. Before that, it was clicks in ads, which was pennies. You couldn't really make much at all from that. So you didn't. So from like 2001 to 2005 or 6, I made absolutely nothing off of all the stuff that I submitted, and it didn't really matter much outside of needing to have a job at GameStop.
Fair enough. So there was a point where you were just doing it for fun, more or less, and then you realized, I can make money off this, so you started making money off it.
For sure. I even did some behind-the-scenes stuff that nobody knows about. One of the reasons why I was able to make Super Meat Boy is because there was one year where I don't know how I got the contact, but I ended up hiring Calder to help me program some of the stuff. But I got contacted by some sort of Greenpeace-like company to do a series of Flash games based off of this guy who was like walking across some frozen continent. I don't know. And I was supposed to come up with, I think it was 7 games. and they were paying me a lot of money, much more than sponsorships, and the games were much more simple than my own games. I did not put my name on any of these games. They were total crap, total trash, and very cringy. But I needed money, and I needed to have some sort of savings to kind of sit on. And I remember that year was my most successful year in my life at that point, and I think I made like 30 grand off of just those games, because they had a lot of money and they were throwing it around, and I was taking it. And it, of course, half of that goes to living expenses, but that's what I had to live. I had like 8 to 10 grand to live off of for 2 years while I made Super Meat Boy, because I had no job. That was my job, and we were getting no funding. So for the 2 years, I had to make that work, and I saved that money, and I drained it to nothing, and had to start selling my Nintendo games and CDs. I sold them all, my Legos, but it paid off in the end.
Yes, it did. Bloody hell. All right. Do you remember the names of those games?
I don't, and I didn't care. So I didn't care to remember them.
Oh, dear.
They were stupid. And they got stupider as it went. I remember there was a point where I had made, so like the first couple ones that I made were like pretty basic, whatever. There was a skateboard, not skateboard game, but so it was like this, you were on a not jet ski, the snow one. The snow jet ski, snow ski is what they're called. You were on like a snow skier type thing, and you were going through some frozen terrain, and it was just jumping, ducking. So like a game of skate. And I did that. I did one where you were like scaling a mountain, and you had to like hold on to the wall tight, move left, move right to like avoid barriers. And then there was one, I think the best one, where it was a platformer where you were jumping across ice that had like some give to it when you jump, which was like whatever. I did those 3, and then they just kind of let me do whatever, and they just gave me very like a little bit of feedback. And then they started saying like, okay, here are the villains. And it was turning into very much a Captain Planet situation.
Right.
And it was like, okay, now there's these villains. And this guy's, and you could tell it was just like a group of people probably sitting around a table and being like, what's cool that the kids like, but also is very, environmentally friendly and whatever else. Like we'll have this guy's called Paluto, and this, like just dumb shit. And I'm like, how in the fuck am I going to, and they're like, put this in the next game. And I'm like, I have no idea how that's going to happen. I don't know how that's going to go into the next game. But yeah, we did a bunch of dumb shit, and then I don't know what even happened with it. I don't even know. I mean, I didn't look back. It was work. It was something to make money. I was doing what I was told, and I don't even know if it went up online or not. But
yeah, that'd be the thing, wouldn't it?
But that's not the first time it's happened. I've done it before. I did something I was actually kind of proud of. I did like this really long 5-minute animation for this company, a condom company called Canadian Nookie. Yeah. And they referred to condoms as Mounties. And I had to animate a talking dick Mountie. And like, it was very patriotic. I actually really enjoyed doing it. And then I also made his interactive website in Flash, and he paid me, and then nothing, just radio silence, and nothing ever happened.
Oh, that's so unfortunate. That'd be great to have in Flashpoint if it still existed.
I know. I mean, I could dig through old hard drives maybe and try to find that stuff, but yeah, that's what I kind of did on the side too, is interactive websites in Flash. I did a few, more than a few back in the day.
There is also a lot of dicks in Flash, because I was talking to I can never pronounce his last name, but Matt, the guy who makes Epic Battle Fantasy, and he was telling me about the time how Newgrounds got hacked and everyone's pictures got replaced with dicks.
That seems amazing.
Yeah,
I would agree. I mean, I made quite a few dick related Flash things.
Yep, that it's just the thing. Like, was it really just the culture of the time that caused that?
Yeah, it's just a bunch of kids being stupid.
Yeah.
Like we're just making stupid jokes and being stupid kids, and trying to out shock each other, and it was just about violence and being over the top, and it was very much a there were no rules. Wild West. No one was regulating. There were no parents coming on here and telling us what to do. There was nobody else policing anyone. It was no holds barred. Like it was a 4chan type situation. It was do whatever. And it was just a lot of dumb shit. there's definitely a lot of dumb shit, but in that dumb shit, there were also a lot of really creative kids expressing themselves in ways that worked for them at the time. It was angsty, like original Newgrounds era, in the early 2000s, I think kind of exemplifies a lot of teenage angst, which you don't really see anymore. I don't even know what teenage angst looks like these days. Like, what do kids rebel against now? Like, what do they do? What do they do?
All you really need to do is go and hop on TikTok, and you'll be filled with.
I
Teenage
guess so.
angst.
That is a thing. But is anybody like making like? There's got to be TikTokers that make fun of TikTokers, I guess.
I'm sure there are somewhere.
But yeah, just a bunch of creative kids doing dumb shit that, they at least felt that didn't matter at all at the time.
Do you miss that?
Yeah, I miss it for sure. Definitely.
Yeah, because I feel like that. I miss that entire era of the internet in general, where nobody was around to tell you off.
Yeah. Nobody was an adult yet. Yeah, and then the adults didn't know that those pockets of space existed. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that my headspace is still there, and my goal currently after Mugenics is to free up my creative time and not plan ahead. I did this thing for a good 10 years where I planned ahead hardcore. I kind of got into that mode of like I was constantly running, like from 2006 to 2010, like to the Realistic Super Meat Boy. I was running it, sprinting and trying to get to wheel and deal, get as many opportunities as possible, make as many games as I possibly could, be as creative as possible, get as good as I possibly could. And I was just going, going, going. And it didn't end. And it was really hard to slow down. And I planned basically 10 years ahead. And I've now just finally cleared my plate of all the stuff that I had been planning and working on for all that amount of time. And the last thing on the plate, which will probably take 2 years, is Mugenics. And once that's finished, I would love to be able to make small games again where I'm kind of in that headspace again, where I simply don't care. Like, I really just want to have fun with it again and not worry about if a game's going to sell, worry if a game's going to upset people, worry if a game's going to not be good enough. Just do something. Just do something and see if I can grow from the experience and have fun with it. Because I think the last time I did that was when I made a game called Fingered. I also made the art in Flash, which was a couple-month project that I made with James, who I ended up making Bumbo with. And the reason I made Bumbo with him is because making Fingered was one of the most enjoyable, quick experiences that I had in the past 10 years, because it was so stupid. It was so low investment, so goofy, and I don't know who would want to play it, but I thought it was fun, so I had fun with doing it. I had fun with doing the trailer for it. Like, everything about the time spent in it was really fun, and it was so quick and short, much like Flash games were back in the day. And I long for that feeling, and I want to go there again, and I hope to be able to go there soon and no longer worry about big games with high expectations.
It's not exactly the same situation, but I'll say that I know exactly how you feel. Because I'm kind of having the same problems myself over here.
It's always nice. It's when you could go back to that simple time.
Yeah,
simple
it
time where it doesn't matter.
All right, so I get the feeling I know the answer to this question, considering how involved you were, but I'll ask anyway. Can you draw a comparison between Flash pre-Adobe and post-Adobe? And do you think that if Macromedia hadn't been bought out, Flash might have lasted a lot longer?
I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
You know the bugs that were the bugs that were there in 3.5 are still there now. Like they didn't ever fix them. Like it's been the same thing for forever, and I don't think Adobe killed Flash. I think that it wasn't. I think that not being able to get sponsorships for games killed Flash. Like I think a lot of people moved on to other things, and it just wasn't a viable investment in any way, shape, or form. And websites, like Flash websites now look old in the same way a GeoCities website looked old back then. Like you instantly know something was, well, not anymore, but back a couple years ago, you'd see a Flash website and you're like, oh, that's Flash. And Flash felt like so early 2000s. So I think it just got played out, everything ends. And people moved on from using it. I'm just one of those dinosaurs that's still in it because I like the tool.
So you think the reason why Flash went was because it was just a product of its time and they weren't able to modernize it?
Yeah. I honestly think the success of Flash was an accident, and I think it has everything to do with Tom. I think without Tom Fulp, Flash wouldn't have even been a thing. It would have been a blip. Like, it would have been Dreamweaver. Like, do you know Dreamweaver? Do you talk about Dreamweaver? Because that was a tool that everybody used more than Flash back then. The only thing that
funnily enough, I know exactly what you mean, because I learned Dreamweaver back like 10 years ago.
Exactly. It was the same tool, and I learned Dreamweaver way back when. So it's like, it was a tool for websites that happened to be an animation tool because you needed animation to do cool transitions for the websites. Everything else was an afterthought that they added because they noticed that Tom was making games like with their basic action scripts, so they supported it more as they went. I feel like it was kind of an accidental thing, and it just kind of was a good tool for people who are into animation and or really basic game scripting to get into in the early 2000s. And without the Newgrounds and general game portal scene, that it would have died then. I mean, it was probably dying off right before that scene exploded, and then the scene kept it alive for another 5 or 6 years, and then it just kind of petered out and died.
That's not an opinion I've heard, but it's also an entirely reasonable one. So, thanks. That'll be going in the book too. Number 14, that'll be going in the book.
Well, yeah. I mean, I could be very wrong. I don't know any behind the scenes anything, but that is my logical conclusion.
No, I totally get where you're coming from, and it does make sense to me. It is a good question. How long would Flash effectively have lasted had it not been around? Because, we could argue that you're right, and Flash, the Flash portals around 03 to 05 were what kept Flash alive, and then Flash ended up being used for YouTube, and then YouTube was what kept it alive for a fair bit longer yet.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Tom originally was the creator of YouTube. He had the portal was basically like, well, you should talk to him about it. Ask him about YouTube. He used to be like, oh my God, I remember when YouTube started, and he's like, dude, this was my idea. I had everything. This is the next step for Newgrounds, was video uploads, that he had been working on that too. But you should talk to him about it.
Yeah, I have to, because Newgrounds, as far as I know, was the first website of its kind to have an automated user-generated content portal with
He's got some
comments and ratings and
yeah, he's got some crazy stories too, like how Trauma saved Newgrounds. Like if it wasn't for Trauma, maybe Flash wouldn't have even ever been a thing.
Trauma.
Yeah, the movie company, Toxic Avenger, Classic Nukem High, bunch of bad movies.
I am not even remotely familiar with this. Oh man, I really do have a lot to ask him about in that case.
Well, you're familiar with Suicide Squad and Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Okay, so James Gunn was one of the directors of a bunch of Trauma movies, or at least one. He worked with Lloyd Kaufman, who, it's my cup of tea. It's very weird, very abrasive, dark humor from the 80s. But basically, they were a very indie movie company, which had a website, and they were trying to like transition into putting their movies in, especially advertising their movies on the web in the early 2000s. And then there was a crash, which basically put the .com crash, like killed a bunch of websites. And Newgrounds is one of those websites that died with it back then. But then Trauma.com actually offered to host it for him to keep him afloat. And Trauma saved Newgrounds and possibly Flash.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a pretty crazy story, and they even put him in one of their movies too. He makes a guest appearance in Citizen Toxie, which is Toxic Avenger 4.
Neat. I will have to ask him about that because there are so many questions I need to ask that man, but I really do just need to work up the nerves. There are still so many people I need to try and contact for this book, man. I've got like a dozen people, and I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface.
There's a lot going on, man. And I mean, the people I know are just people who are my friends, Like, there was so much more of the community and people I didn't like.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of people out there.
There's so many little circles. Like, God, I'd love to get onto Jan Albartis and just ask him about Motas and what the deal is. Like, someone from my fucking Discord server called him. Like, found his phone number and called the bastard.
Who is this?
The guy who made Mystery of Time and Space, Motas, the Escape the Room game.
I have not played it.
Okay, fair enough. I won't go any further then. It's kind of legendary because the full game was up on his website, but then after a while it got taken down. There was only like an incomplete copy, and that was the only copy thought to exist. But then someone just showed up on the Flashpoint server one day and was like, "Hey, do you guys want a copy of this?" And it turned out to be the full copy, and we were like,
I'm looking
sure?
at it now. I wonder if I've seen this. When did this come out?
Like 2001, something like that.
Old,
It's massively influential. It's one of the big reasons that Escape the Room games are as popular as they were, alongside Crimson Room. But yeah.
And was this Flash?
Yeah. It was Flash, and like the way it was embedded in the web page, you needed like Java, because Java would play some MIDI music. Yeah, I know, right? That was my reaction.
Yeah, this does look familiar, but it also does look like a lot of other Escape the Room type.
Yeah, but it was one of the first. Like, it was one of the earliest.
Yeah.
Massively popular.
Yeah. Oh, how many more questions? My wife needs to go to bed.
Sorry, I'll move on then. We've only got a couple more. And these ones should be relatively quick to answer. What didn't you like about Flash?
I didn't like that it would crash and delete my FLA files.
It was buggy, was it?
Incredibly. There was a point in Super Meat Boy development where I had done all the cutscenes in Flash, and they were huge. I think I ended up having 25 minutes of animation in Super Meat Boy for just cutscenes, which is like an episode of a TV show, which is pretty crazy. But one of the cutscenes I had finished animating, and for whatever reason, I saved the file, and the FLA file was corrupted. There's no recovering it, and unless I were to copy the file and back it up in two different spaces, there was no way to back it up and save it, and there was no like SVN Dropbox type stuff that I could roll it back with back then. So I completely lost it, and I had to do the whole thing from scratch. Was fucking horrible. Ugh. And it was during the last 2 weeks of crunch.
Oh,
And so I was like running off of very little to no sleep. It was buggy, yeah. I got many stories of stupid bugs that fuck everything up or just slow you down immensely. That was the only thing negative that I can think of when it comes to Flash. Outside of in the beginning, people like scoffing and saying anybody who worked in Flash programming wise was just a stupid script kiddie and needs to learn a program.
fair enough. Do you miss it now that it's gone from browsers?
I mean, I miss it when I'm trying to open up a file on my desktop that I have, and I'm like, wait, I'll just drag this over to. Nope, can't do that anymore.
Oh, yes. The unfortunate.
Yeah.
Where do you think you'd be without it, and would you do it all again?
I would be nowhere without it. I would have no career at all, and it's a guarantee. I mean, without Tom, I probably wouldn't have much of a career at all either. But if Flash didn't exist, I would never have gotten into games, period.
Fair enough. What do you think about the current indie industry? We were talking earlier about how it was, but how do you think about how it is now after the indie game scene has basically exploded?
I mean, I hate to sound like an old, jaded idiot, but I don't... It's so... I always hope for... Everybody always talks about the indie apocalypse, which I guess has actively been happening for forever, but people haven't wised up to it yet. Because everybody still wants to be a developer. But, like, Steam gets upwards of 30 submissions a day, uploads of legit games that people spent years on. And the average number of sales for each of those games is less than, a couple hundred.
Yep, I've read a few articles on it.
So that's super depressing. It's so flooded. I was one of the people who argued for gatekeeping when it came to not automating Steam, which is kind of weird coming from Newgrounds, but there's such a flood, and it's such a crapshoot, and I can't keep track of what's good. I can't keep track of. I'm overwhelmed by the amount of content that's constantly being made, and everybody's making everything that I feel like it's super overload, and I can't find the diamonds in the rough because there's just too much. But that said, that there are people out there who do attempt to find those specific things. Terry and Derek, those are two of them that actually do post, free indie game of the week, and they try to do that, old school throwback of like people are obviously still doing free games and uploading them places, and here's the ones you should play.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm a jaded old man, and I admit to the fact that I don't play games as much as I used to. I play more board games than digital games these days. I have a little more interest in those. I just don't have enough time. I have 2 kids. I work a lot. I have a wife, and I have a lot of hobbies, and the time that I have to play games, I would much rather play Magic or play D&D with my friends or whatever else. So I'm just terrible to ask those kind of questions because I'm so old.
That's all right. I'm looking over to the left. I'm seeing the D&D character I've got. I'm seeing the stack of board games I've started piling up. I feel like I'm starting to turn into the same bloody guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're gonna get tired. Your hair will slowly move back on your head, and your hair will turn gray.
My hair was supposed to turn grey when I was 18 because that was what happened to my father, but it hasn't yet. So,
I noticed today that my earlobes are more saggy than I remember them being.
And that's the least gross thing we've talked about this entire interview.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure but once the earlobes start to sag, then I shouldn't have much of an opinion on anything that's new.
Fair enough. I'm guessing I'm going to get the same answer for this question, but do you think HTML5 can recapture the same magic the Flash had, or...
I know jack shit about HTML5.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I said that.
Yeah.
What do you think about projects like Ruffle, which are like Flash emulators?
That's cool. You know what I was actually playing today? Like, I don't even know why. I think Danny O'Dwyer had posted an image of a game that I'd never heard of, which was, I don't even know what the genre is called, but it's a role-playing first person in the main window, and then on the sub windows you have the little pictures of your 4 characters in your party, and then you like, it's like you first person step by step walk through in this kind of environment. You know what I'm talking about?
Old school dungeon crawler, yeah.
Yeah. And I saw it and I was like, oh shit. There's this game called Dungeon Master 2, which I loved, and I played it on my Sega CD. It was one of the only games I owned on that stupid system, and I played the hell out of it. And I was like, I was a very young teen then. I probably didn't know what I was doing. I want to play it again. I wonder if it's on Steam. Of course it wasn't, and I searched, and there's a portal that has just online emulator for every fucking old off the market, and you can't get it at all, PC game out there. And I actually found the game and I played it for like 15-20 minutes.
Yep.
That's cool. So yeah, any kind of emulator like that is fantastic. I'm a huge fan of emulators. They definitely will save the day when it comes to not letting go of the past and not letting it die.
Yeah, do you think that will even get close to the original sort of community we had if those projects ever take off? Or do you think it's like not so much dead and buried for good, but it's just not going to be able to get that same momentum back up?
No, it's going to be there for nostalgic purposes. It's going to be people like us that are like, I want to go back and play that stick fighting game or whatever else. And that's the way to go do it.
All right. Anything else you want to say about Flash, about the industry, about the games, about anything in general?
I look forward to whatever the next thing is. Maybe it is TikTok. Maybe TikTok is the new Newgrounds.
Fuck no.
I look forward to seeing kids utilizing whatever the next big thing is, and then sitting in my lawn chair on my lawn and screaming at them about how they suck.
Just as people did back in the day with Flash.
Yeah, that's what I look forward to.
Fair enough. That is the entirety of my questions. I'd love to pick your brain for 5 hours more, but you've got a wife to tend to.
For sure.
Yep, thank you very much. That was a lot of useful information. I will definitely get as much of that into the book as I can. Yeah,